let's start. I know it's early. I'll do my best to keep you awake. We're going to talk about DevOps bottlenecks. My name is Baruch Sadogursky. I'm developer advocate with JFrog at jbaruch on Twitter. If you're still not following me, you should do it right now. Extremely entertaining guy, as you will discover shortly. If you are still not sure, but you will think about it later, no worries. On the bottom of every slide, you have my Twitter handle, in case you forget. But most importantly, you have the show notes link I'm going to talk about in a second. So jfrog.com/show notes has a special page that I prepared for you. It already has the slides. It already has all the links that I'm going to mention, all the companies, all the books, all the research, everything is there. So that's actually the only link you need to remember. The video I will upload as soon as I will get my hand on it from the organizers. Hopefully it will be soon. So that's the only thing you need to remember. So this talk is called research, and it is a research because I am personally, I'm not in the position to declare that I know about all the bottlenecks of DevOps and what people do and what works for them and what doesn't. So instead, we interviewed people. In JFrog, we have 4,500 paying customers, and we asked some of them, and we tried to find a good mix of different profiles to share with you. So we started at home. We started in our own VP of R&D at JFrog. Think about company of 350 people, multiple locations in the world, doing software for software development. We interviewed Cto of Boxxy. Boxxy is a tiny startup. It was, I think, like maybe 5 people back then when we spoke, and obviously the dynamics are completely different. They, by the way, do software for monitoring of running mobile applications and collecting metrics. If you are in this business, check them out. We spoke with the CTO of top Israeli finance firm. Obviously, some of our interviewers didn't want us to stay anonymous, and we tried to, as much as possible, to be as vague in giving the descriptions, but there are not a lot of top Israeli firms. That's one of them. VP of Engineering of CA Technologies. He's actually now in SignalFX. Leonid Igolnik, Executive VP of Engineering, now in SignalFX. Back then, he was a VP of Engineering at CA Technologies. And you know, I think they were like fifth biggest software vendor in the world. So that's like a huge organization. Sandbird is another startup. I would say something in between Boxxy and JFrog. They are New York-based. They do subscription for fragrances, and they're kind of a mid-sized startup. This is that profile. And an architect of a top Fortune-rated privately held tech firm. And that's another very vague description of someone who wanted to stay anonymous. But yeah, they are very big. You for sure know the name, and they do great technology in tech area. Applications engineering manager at, again, Fortune 500 software company. That's another company that you for sure know and use their products. And he's actually engineering manager there. So that's kind of the people that we spoke, and today I'm going to present you some of their answers and our takeaways from those answers. It's good to start with the question, what is DevOps? And obviously there is multiple talks about that, including one from me. When you go to jfrog.com/show notes, you will see a link to this talk. If you want to hear me ranting about what is DevOps and what is not, that will be a good place to start. But I think the key takeaway from this other talk is that while we think of DevOps as obviously the merge of operations development, that's like DevOps, and then later someone realized they probably forgot QA. but it was too late to interfere it in the name, so it reminded DevOps, but QA is kind of important as well. And kind of the sweet spot in the middle of is DevOps. But sometimes we also think about DevOps as like a very hard mix of all of them, right? We kind of take all three of them, throw them into the blender, and we create this magical creature named DevOps. And you obviously think about Netflix, and all the software engineers have access to production and work with these awesome tools that they develop, like Spinnaker and what's not. And the engineers in Netflix are, for us, the model of DevOps. They do everything, and they are this blend. And obviously, as you know, you are not Netflix. You need to remember that. So we will talk about how what we do. Anyone is Netflix, by the way? No, right? And we're going to talk about what we do and how it is different from this blend during the talk. So before we speak about bottlenecks, let's first figure out if there are bottlenecks. Maybe we don't have any bottlenecks. Maybe everything is great. Maybe, you know, I don't know what you are doing here. Maybe you came to see the imaginary bottlenecks that no one has. Let's see if that's the truth. One of the metrics, and that goes into another talk that we're doing, and that's the data-driven DevOps. One of the key metrics of DevOps is the delivery velocity, right? How fast we deliver good quality software to production. It's a good metrics for DevOps because writing software is the dev, delivering to production is the ops, and high quality is the QA. If we manage all three of them, we write code, it's good, and it's fast to production, our DevOps probably is fine, and there is no bottleneck. So delivery velocity is a good metrics for DevOps. And obviously, you know the cycle of continuous delivery. We write some code, we build some code, we test some code, we deploy to production, we release, and then we operate it in runtime and prepare for the next circle. So we went ahead and we asked our interviewers, what is your velocity? And we got some very interesting answers. 6 months. Okay, that's long. 1 month. Well, 2 weeks. 1 day. All of them are, and then like 2 hours or even minutes. And we're like, well, okay, that's an interesting finding, and probably the people who release once at 6 months have bottlenecks that people who release once in 2 hours don't have. That was our assumption when we started to ask questions. And obviously, our next question was, are you happy with your release cycle? And we expected that people who release once a year will tell us, or 6 months will tell us, no, we are very miserable. And people who release every 2 hours will say, yes, we are completely satisfied. And here's a question for you. Let's do a nice poll. Who thinks no one was satisfied with their release cycle? Okay, I think like maybe 10%. How about who thinks 20% of the people who asked were satisfied? Okay, couple of hands. Who thinks half of the people we spoke with were satisfied? Again, couple of hands. And 80% satisfied? 1 hand. Who thinks everybody were satisfied? Well, surprise. Well, okay, that's the animation that I should have done. Sorry about that. Well, surprise. Everybody told us they're satisfied. Ooh. So there are 2 assumptions here that we need to make. First one, they're bloody liars. And I stick to that. The second is they think that their release cadence is actually a result of some kind of optimization for something. right? Obviously, the people who release every 2 hours, they're happy because they do DevOps by the book, and they're fine. But the interesting question is how the people who release every 6 months justify their satisfaction with these obviously bad candidates. What do they tell to themselves to convince themselves that they are satisfied? Right? And the question is, okay, so next question we asked, all right, so you're satisfied, this is very good. Tell me why. Tell me what you think works good for you, and when do you think you need to improve, and what should happen so you won't be satisfied? And so the examples of the answers are, I don't measure because I have no complaints. Well, you know what? That's fair. If everybody are happy, the customers are happy, all the stakeholders in the organization are happy, the business is happy with my cadence, probably I'm doing the right thing. So it's kind of, it's not that I don't measure, it's actually I measure and I got no negative feedback, right? This is kind of the answer. When the bug queue is empty, we're good. That's obviously, that comes from more of the dev part of the house. Well, we write code, and we drain our backlog, and there is no backlog, and what we wrote is in production, probably everything is good. When I get fewer tickets on a process, and that's the other side, that's from the ops side of the house, I'm in charge now of the release process, and if there are fewer complaints on the process, probably I'm good. Automation of every single piece. It's also kind of a weird metric. So here what they say is, once we automate everything, we are good, and then the cadence is whatever it is. If our automation allows us to release in every couple of minutes, probably that's the right one. And if our process takes 2 days, then that's fine, it will be 2 days, but at least we did our best and we automated everything. And the other measures that we heard about, version adoption, we're going to talk about it in a second. Burn down diagram, bug burn down diagram, that goes back to I don't have any bugs, so probably I'm good. Productivity gains, and that's kind of an interesting one because here people are satisfied not necessarily with the end goal, but with the progress they made, right? So it used to take 2 days, now it's 2 minutes, some aspect of my release. Now I'm satisfied. Can I make it 2 seconds? Maybe then I will be satisfied even more. Quality, this is good. No regressions. Well, the release will take as much as it takes. I don't care much about the velocity itself because I need to make sure that I don't have any bugs. And if the QA people tell me we need to test this version for a month, my release cadence will be months plus, but it's still good for me because then I will make sure that there are no bugs, and that's the important part. Does it make sense so far? And MTTR, mean time to recovery, that kind of goes a little bit with quality. When I can be sure that I can recover fast from any problems, then my software is ready. And whatever it takes, it will take. Business metrics, that's another one. Business can dictate what the release cycle should be, and take an example of, for example, Java platform. They had some changes in their release cycle relatively recently, maybe a year and a half ago, when they switched from 18-month release cycle to half-a-year release cycle. And that was, we weren't sure back then, but now it's absolutely clear that it was a business decision because after that, they announced their new support scheme in which they actually force their customers to either update frequently or pay money for the support of older versions, obviously hoping that the enterprises won't be able to update frequently and will have to pay money for the support. So while a year and a half ago we weren't sure whether it was a business decision, now I think it's pretty clear, and that's kind of an example of how business can dictate faster releases. Another example is business actually dictating slower releases. And that we're going to talk in a second. So the real question is, what is the right release cycle? Is there a good excuse to release less often? And anyone has an idea? There is one very loud answer that we heard. Anyone? Well, socks is good, but there is nothing in socks that prevents you from release faster. So the answer that we heard over and over again for those who release slower is you have to have enough on the table. It's a business decision that we won't release too fast, because if we don't have enough features, our customers won't take the update. They will remain on an older version until they have a good reason to update or to upgrade, and that will be enough new features. And if we release a lot of releases without many features, our customers will skip them, and then it will complicate both our lives and their lives if they need to upgrade through a lot of versions. I guess you all know what I'm talking about. Just yesterday we met here in our booth. By the way, booth, we still have those awesome t-shirts in the booth. Downstairs, downstairs? Yes, downstairs. Don't forget to come and grab yours. Someone came to us and said, well, are you familiar with Artifactory? Who is familiar with Artifactory? Okay, almost all of you, good. So Artifactory now in version 6 something, a lady came to us and said, we're on version 2. How do we upgrade? Version 2 was 7 years ago. So this is what happened. We don't want that to happen. So the business will tell you, don't release a new version until you have enough meat, enough food on the table, because people won't upgrade. Who thinks it's a valid? Who thinks it's a valid point? Yeah, it is. It sounds like a valid point. The problem with this point is the reason why your customers won't upgrade. And your customers won't upgrade because they don't trust your software. They feel that they need to do what is called the acceptance tests on the customer side. They need, the staging environment. They will first upgrade on the staging environment. They will run rigorous tests that verify that you didn't break anything for them, right? That it's not this dreadful update, oh, I have to update, but it will break anything. And the impossible dilemma, we need the updates because there are good stuff in it, but it will break things, so we need to pay money, we need to invest effort in order to make sure that the vendor won't break anything. So actually, this reason is a very, very bad one. What you say when you admit that your customers won't take your update is that you didn't convince your customers that your software is good enough quality so they will safely update. Because if that's the case, there is nothing to be afraid of. And take an example of much less stressful than your business application, and that will be your smartphones and the updates of your smartphones. And think about your stress levels when you saw a new iOS or Android operating system inviting you to update a couple of years ago. I remember it was pretty stressful, and it's much less stressful now. And it's the same for your operating system on your laptops, and obviously it's even more clear with the applications that you use day to day. Anyone knows which version of Chrome they're running now? 504. Right? That's the point. We have no idea, and you know, they now have this ridiculous versioning scheme, and frankly, no one cares. No one cares because we trust that Chrome upgrade won't break anything. And we do it. Now, is it the case with your business applications? Can you now migrate to a new JDK version in production without any tests? You can't. And this difference is why this ridiculous excuse of we cannot release too fast exists. And here is obviously the shameless plug of them all. This is a book that I wrote with two of co-founders of JFrog, Yoav Landman and Fred Simon, about the concept that we call the liquid software. Liquid software is what Chrome is doing now. When you think about it, the Chrome updates are so tiny and so frequent, it almost feels like software is flowing from the vendor to you on a steady stream and you don't even know about it. And if you break your updates to very verified, very small and very frequent stream, you take this fear of, oh my God, it's a huge update, it's going to break everything, you take it away. Because you establish trust between you as a vendor and your customers, and then you can update as fast as you can. Does it make sense? All right. So now you don't offload quality tests to your customers. You actually guarantee that the quality is good. The customers are always ready to upgrade because you made it more reliable. And that means you just lost your last excuse for not releasing fast. And here we're going back to the point of, wait a second. I have all this time between my releases to ensure this high quality. I need a very rigorous test cycle. I need human eyes and human hands to verify the quality because my software is such a snowflake, there is no way I can automate it, right? And I need this time. The whole idea of liquid software won't work for me because I need more tests so I can release frequently enough. And that sounds like a valid point until you have a proof otherwise. So very, very important resource is the State of DevOps report from DORA, and DORA stands for DevOps Research something. Thank you very much. DevOps Research and Assessment. And Nicole, who was the keynote yesterday? Yesterday, here in Jenkins World, she's behind this initiative together with Gene Keen and Jez Humble. And they release every year the State of DevOps report. And that's a great read, and obviously the link is in the show notes, so you will go there and you will read it. But I want to show you just one data point. So they divide the players in the teams in DevOps to 4 categories. There is the high performance, the medium performance, and the low performance. And inside high, there is a small group which is called elite. And for simplicity, we can just call them Netflix. Take a look at that. Lead time for changes, that's the release cycle. How long it takes from the coding to actually customers see the release. And let's see how it correlates to quality. Now, we are talking about less than 1 hour for elite to push the changes, and we're talking about between month and 6 months for the low performance. So this is kind of the two sides. Now let's see how it correlates to quality. 0 to 15% change failure rate. That's the amount of problems with quality for the elite. 46 to 60% for the low performance. Not only we do not see the negative correlation, that was a lot of negatives, instead we see a positive correlation. The fastest you release, the better your quality. This puzzles. But again, if you go to this Dora report, you will find there are a couple of theories that explain why that happens. And the leading theory is that automation provides better quality than manual QA and not worse. And you have to automate as much as possible to achieve a fast release. Obviously, that's not the picture in the beginning. You go through some slope, but you'll read everything in the report. It's really, really good. So now, when we establish that despite the 100% satisfaction of people with their release cadence, there is a good release cadence and a better release cadence. So now let's talk about bottlenecks from going from bad to good. And again, in our interviews, we isolated 3 different areas of those bottlenecks: education, automation, and trust. Talking about education, one of the, I would say, favorite, my personal favorite, and Leonid, the VP of engineering in CA at the time, kind of mottos in life is pain is instructional. And it obviously starts with kids falling out the bed and not trying to do that again. And it's also true for adults trying to do the wrong thing. For example, not providing enough monitoring in their applications, not writing enough tests in their applications, and end up in being on call at 3 a.m. in the morning, and that kind of improves the process. So pain is instructional is very paramount aspect of improving your release cadence and generally providing more of a DevOps culture, and that goes directly to education. And for moving forward, there are 3 very important aspects that you have to have all 3 of them to actually generate some momentum. You need to know, and here, conference like this one and the Dora report and other resources are actually providing us with the shining goal, right? When you read about elite, you want to be there, and that's how you know that it exists. The second aspect is that you need to believe that you can get it. And here I have an example of someone that we interviewed as well, but we didn't enter his official title or something. He was in an army contractor for many years doing software engineering there. And what he told us is that while they always knew they can do better than release every 2 years, no one actually believed that they can do it because of obviously the bureaucracy and the regulations and everything that comes with being in the army. So not only you need to know that you can do better, you actually must believe that it's possible. And there is something in the leadership that needs to convey this message that not only we can improve, we actually can do it and can achieve it. And you need to give a shit. People need to care about getting better. And of course, there is tons of examples of, I would say, like old school enterprisey corporations in which people don't really give a shit about getting better. They go with their lives, they do what they do, and no one cares. So it all eventually translates into money. All three of them. Sending your developers to conferences to hear what Netflix does. And actually educating them that they can get there. And hiring the people that give a shit cost money. And that means that you need to justify this investment to the business by providing them, and I'm going back to the question, why should we improve at all? By providing them with those insights that better releases lead to better quality, to better customer satisfaction, and to beating your competition to the market. And this is why liquid software makes sense. This is why we want to have it. And this is why you should invest in it. And it all goes into activation energy. And that's, unfortunately, I didn't have the better picture, but that's like people pushing the airplane down the runway in Siberia, in Russia. That actually happened half a year ago. That's a good investment in activation energy. And obviously, having the money and having the motivation is what's going on. Another aspect of willing to do stuff is obviously job security, especially about quality and the engineers that do manual QA. Because it's very, very clear that they are the first on the way out. If I automate my QA and I automate my release engineers, my QA engineers just go home. And here I can talk about JFrog. 10 years ago when we started, there were a reasonably limited amount of quality and release automation possibilities. And we had a pretty big team of QA and release engineers. And I would say while we improved from a pretty decent, I would say, 3 months release cycle to liquid software where we are today, how many engineers do we fired? 0. Not only we didn't fire anything, we actually tried to hire and cannot find enough people. Because while there are people who will definitely go home because they cannot do anything else, this is the majority. This is the minority, sorry. The majority will find their place in the new organization, working with new technology, improving the process, and actually the faster we release, the more work we do, the more working hands we need. So this fear is really not justified. We will have the same amount of people, we'll just do more with them, right? So the first push is hard, and you need to keep your eye on the price. You need to constantly remind why you are doing it, that the velocity of your releases actually serves the business in beating the competition to market, in providing better quality, and in providing better value for your customer. And for the older code bases, it can take very long time to achieve, a year and more, but it's still worth it. And you know what? Especially for the older code bases, especially for the legacy applications, this investment pays off because you modernize it and it becomes better in a very, very visible ways. If you already have good enough software, those improvements can kind of slip behind the radar. Well, it got a little bit better. But when you take a failing organization, a failing product, and you turn it around to be the leader of the market in a year and a half, it's very clear what you did, why you did, and why you did it. And that obviously is kind of a real example. And while we spoke about a lot about the people and the process during this talk, I would like to talk a little bit about tools. Not much, because it is an important aspect, but not the most important, but still. And the 3 main aspects of the tools that you need to pick to make this leap into liquid software and into better release cadence, all of them have three same characteristics. They need to be immutable. You don't want to deal with pets. You only want to deal with cattle, which is replaceable easily, fast enough. They have to be scriptable, and that means that you can automate around it, and I think that's kind of the whole idea. And they need to be universal because the tools should support the business goals and not other way around. And if today you write your applications in Java, in .NET, and tomorrow you decide that you want to adopt microservices because microservices will help you release faster, and you want to write them with Go, your tools, whatever you're using, should support the new stack as easily as the old stack. And the blending of three of them actually creates something that can be repeated, and that's the key for automation of your release. You do the same thing over and over and over again automatically and in a repeatable way. And here we come to a very interesting dilemma that, again, we asked our interviewers. We asked them, how do you enforce or not enforce the selection of your tools? And we heard a couple of questions, a couple of answers, and this is a very interesting one that we actually put here as an example. The tools team, what used to be the ops team, or what it's sometimes called the DevOps team in the organization, but they are actually tools team that kind of advise on the tools and work with those tools and automate around those tools, build those pipelines. They have two options. They can dictate to their organization, folks, this is what you have to work with, and if you don't like it, don't let the door hit you on the back on your way out. Or they can do something smarter, and they can guide. So this is a very interesting example of a tool matrix in which one of the organizations that we investigated use, and they go from, they use the terminology from the Tech Radar of ThoughtWorks, which is another great resource which is listed in the show notes, and they can advise of what to use or not to use. So they say, if you pick a new project, use Java, use what it is, Invest, Gradle, and use Artifactory. Avoid using Ant. If you already use Maven, that's fine, keep using it, and take a look at X-Ray or whatever. So this is kind of a guidance which comes with very clear incentives. If you use what we are suggesting you to use, you will get our support. We know those tools, we can help you getting started, we can help you on the way, and if there is money need to be invested, like licenses and what's not, you will get it for free. If you prefer to do something else, just because maybe, you know what, you are an incubator which looks ahead and uses stuff that we are still not ready to. Or maybe it's the other way around, you're legacy and you are not ready to move. That's fine, use whatever you like, but we won't be able to support you. Right, so for example, if this organization is heavily invested in Java, and there is a group that wants to write Go now, fine, write in Go. Don't come to the tools team asking whether a new update of Java is good enough, secure, or whatever, and should we take it or not. They do not know. And if you prefer using other tools, if you want to use Concurs instead of Jenkins, that's fine as well. But if Concur will cost you money, it will come from your R&D budget and not from the tools team budget, because this is not what we suggest. And this works extremely well because it gives this flexibility to teams to choose what they want, but it also ensures that 80% of the company will end up on the same stack, which is easy to maintain, which is easy to govern, which is easy to recruit, and what's not. And in like 5 minutes, I want to talk a little bit about trust. That's one of my favorite gifts of all time. Take a look at the cupcakes. So it's cupcakes. It's so good. Right. So let's talk about trust. Remember this? This is kind of the cycle that we all learn how continuous delivery looks like, but most of the times, it actually that. Commits fail at testing, and that's good because that means that our pipeline, our quality gates work, and they won't get to production. They won't get to whatever they need to go. And this is the very known diagram of 7 misfunctions of a team. It goes into more of a team of managerial skills. But actually what I want you to take a look is that the bottom of it is an absence of trust. And then it goes into the fear. Well, conflict in software will be fear of updates. And then it goes to lack of commitment. We are not sure if we are going to take your next version. And then et cetera, et cetera. So actually, with software, it behaves very similar than with teams. And it all starts in a lack of trust. And people acknowledge that when they say that the quality is the bottleneck. We spoke a little bit about it. The automation testing is not enough, and the big green button concept expresses this lack of quality. People afraid to do completely automated rollouts or completely automated deployments because what happened is there is a bug that automating test didn't cover. And this fear is real, and again, going back to liquid software, we need to find an answer of that before we can liquefy our software and make the flow really streaming. And I think that by now it's quite clear where the industry is going, and the industry is going toward canary releases. When we do offload our quality tests to our customers, but we make it as less painful as possible. And this uses the psychology of people that want to try the shiny new thing, even when they feel that it might be not stable enough. And those people always exist, and we want to utilize this curiosity of them to have another layer of quality assurance before we go to the more conservative people that prefers quality over novelty. And you know what? Everybody do canary releases. Everybody. Take any innovator in our field, ask them how they release, they will see that. And we in JFrog, we do that as well. Our on-prem downloadable versions of our software are actually cut after a canary release of our cloud software, which by itself have canary releases for trusted subset of our customers that prefer to see the new version earlier, even if it has something which is not perfect. So we kind of have 2 phases of canary releases, and I have to say that it works. Now both we and the majority of our customers feel much more confident in the quality of our software, and whoever takes the canary releases actually enjoy the innovation and the novelty in them, and they don't mind the some kind of problems that they might encounter. And just to summarize, you remember this picture of how technology process and people should blend together to create this Netflix DevOps reality. Another view about it is the automation, the trust, and education. Those 3 bottlenecks areas that we identified during those interviews, when you fight each and every one of them, and I gave you some of the tips how to do it, but there are obviously others. If you kind of do that and blend them together, you get DevOps. And the Campbell chunky soup here is to remind you that you are not Netflix. And while some kind of synergy and blend behind them is very important, the specialization of the majority of the teams won't go away. And some people will be better at writing code, and others will be better in release automation, and some will be better in thinking through test plans and then implementing them for the rest of us to use. So it is important to cooperate, but not necessarily you have to have everybody be able to do everything in every given time. So I think with that, I have a couple of more minutes for questions, I think.
You do. Hello, testing.
This is DevOps World. If you want to praise this talk on Twitter, mention this hashtag. Jeffrey.com/show notes. Just to remind you, the video as soon as possible. The slides are already there. The links are already there. There is a place to leave a feedback if you prefer to do it there. And just to thank you for being here, a little raffle of something. If you go to this page, you will see all the instructions and everything. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to take.
Yeah, if you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll bring the mic over to you. All right, we'll start back here with this gentleman.
Hey, the one thing that I was wondering is your three components towards going sort of more DevOps of education, trust, and automation. I'm kind of wondering if there should be a fourth component, and that's architecture, in the sense that I mean, and obviously you can make significant improvements with your deploy pipeline without changing your architecture. But if, say, you have a massive monolith or you have a poorly chosen UI technology, you're going to have a very, very difficult time automating your releases.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. And that's, again, a topic of a completely different talk. But, you know, I would mention that most of the times, architecture is an excuse for not moving forward than there is a real reason. Everything can be bad enough that you cannot just move forward, but more frequently than not, we will hear like, oh, we have monolith written in Java, we really cannot do canary releases. And this is obviously not true because you can easily dramatically improve your release cycle with almost every architecture, with obviously the obvious exceptions, right? If you have like a huge monolith and a bad selection of technologies, sometimes you will be held behind. But I don't want to bring it because most of the time it's just an excuse, and this is something that you should ignore as much as possible up until when you really hit the wall with that.
Thank you, Barry. Scott Fulton from the New Stack. You have talked about specialization continuing to exist even for those organizations that adopt very, very short release cycles, that adopt a liquid software framework. There are companies in JFrog's space that sell the ideal of DevOps as a cost savings. And in their animations that demonstrate what they mean by cost savings, one organization depicts IT administrators, people who have worked on what they call undifferentiated infrastructure, as purple people. And they say when you apply DevOps, those people go away. And they actually, you've probably seen the animation. Their heads pop like soap bubbles. And the result, they say, is cost savings. For the JFrog customers who say, hey, we've been promised cost savings, we could cut back on our people by 20, 25%. What's the counter argument? Why should they keep the specialists that they have?
Yeah, so thank you. This is really, really great. So we're talking about this. We're talking about how we will fire everybody, we will leave only the elite engineers, and they will take care of everything. And my answer would be, you are not Netflix. We just ask, no one here is Netflix, right? So don't buy this idea that you can become Netflix and you will only have elite engineers. And by the way, cost saving, they are not. They are the elite you have to pay so much for them, you can double your headcount for the less money. I'm not saying that's what you need to do, but if you are not Netflix, probably you won't be able to fire all those old school sysadmins and go to your developers and say, okay guys, you are Java developers with what, 5 years experience? Very good. Now, please go home, learn Kubernetes, learn learn Envoy, learn Istio, write microservices in Go, and come tomorrow, we will be DevOps. Not gonna happen, not gonna happen. You will probably find a small team of excellent people that will drive your organization forward by applying education, trust, and automation, and will drag the rest of the organization to the future, but they will be a very limited group. The rest of them, and we see crazy ratios, we see this super DevOps elite, 5 people inside thousands of people are in the organization. They lay out the foundations, they build the pipelines, they automate, they guide the tools, but the rest of the organization are the same people. They didn't went home. They just got better because someone is pushing them.
We got time for one more question. Anybody else?
You mentioned Netflix, and I'm aware of their microservices architecture and their high availability and resilience. So, why do you mention Netflix? Why not? What are the best practices that they use, and why is it for you the top?
Yeah, no, I mentioned Netflix obviously more than as a joke than actually a practical example here. It's just like a common name for the shiny top of the hill that we will probably never get there, and take it as quotes and non-capitalized N in the beginning. It's just a term that actually the better term will be the elite performance in the DORA report, and those are the people who release almost always, like a liquid software, with top quality. So this is what I call kind of Netflix, but that's obviously more than a joke. I have a lot of respect for Netflix and what they are doing. I think their talks are really inspirational and aspirational at the same time. This is where we all want to be. The tools that they give to the community, the Netflix OSS project, is a pure gold that help all the industry moving forward. So when I'm mocking them, I'm not really mocking them. They are awesome. The problem is for us is to remember that most of us probably won't ever be Netflix, and that's okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Baruch. That was a great talk. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Give him a hand.
You know where to find me at the booth. More questions and awesome t-shirts.